In 2019, someone posted a single image on 4chan. No name attached, no explanation, just a photograph. Yellowed walls, damp carpet, fluorescent lights humming in an empty room that seemed to stretch on forever. Beneath it, 4 words that would eventually change internet culture permanently. If you're not careful, that was it. That was the entire post. Nobody knows who took the photo. Nobody knows where it was taken. But something about it hit differently. Something about those walls, that light, that particular shade of yellow felt deeply, uncomfortably wrong. Like a place you had been before, in a dream you couldn't quite remember. Within hours, people were building on it, adding lore, adding levels, adding things that lived in the dark beyond the fluorescent glow. By the time a 20-year-old filmmaker named Kane Pixels got his hands on the concept in 2022, the Backrooms had already become one of the most expansive pieces of collaborative internet mythology ever created. And what he did with it, first on YouTube with a borrowed camera and a free copy of Blender, and then eventually on a 30,000 square foot set for an A24 feature film, is one of the strangest and most remarkable creative stories of the decade. This is the full story of the Backrooms, where it came from, how it grew, why it refuses to let go of people, and how a single anonymous image became a Hollywood movie. Let's start at the beginning, not with Kane Pixels, not with YouTube, but with the idea itself. The concept behind the Backrooms is simple enough that anyone can understand it immediately, and unsettling enough that it stays with you for days. The theory goes like this. Reality, as we experience it, has edges, and if you move through the world carelessly enough, if you walk to the wrong wall, turn the wrong corner, lose your footing in exactly the wrong way, you can slip through one of those edges. You can noclip out of reality. And when you do, you end up here, in a place that looks like the back office of a building that was never finished. Fluorescent lights overhead, always buzzing, never flickering. Carpet that smells faintly of something wet. Walls the color of old butter. And no windows, no doors, no exits. Just room after room after room, identical in every direction, stretching on for what the lore would eventually describe as roughly 600 million square miles. The reason this concept worked so well, the reason it spread and stuck and generated more creative output than almost any other internet mythology, is because it did not feel invented. It felt remembered. That specific anxiety of being alone in a large empty building after hours, the wrongness of fluorescent light at 3 a.m, the low-level dread of a corridor that goes on slightly longer than it should. These are things people already carried around inside them. The Backrooms just gave those feelings a name and an address. Within months of that original 4chan post, a wiki had been created. Volunteers, most of them teenagers, were spending hours cataloging the different levels of the Backrooms. Level 0, the original yellow office. Level 1, a warehouse in perpetual half-light. Level 2, maintenance tunnels. A level that broke the numbering system entirely. Each one with its own rules, its own hazards, its own entities. The entities especially captured people's imagination. Smilers, hounds, skin stealers, facelinks. Each one documented with the seriousness of a field guide, as if the people writing these entries had actually been there and were passing on information they had paid for in blood. By 2022, the Backrooms wiki had thousands of pages. There were Backrooms TikToks, Backrooms Reddit threads, Backrooms fan art, Backrooms merchandise. It was everywhere, but it had not yet found its defining visual voice. That was about to change. Kane Pixels was not, by any reasonable measure, the obvious person to do what he did next. He was 18 years old. He had grown up making the kind of videos that every kid with a computer makes. Stop motion with Lego, Gary's Mod Machinima, VFX experiments in After Effects. He had a YouTube channel. He had Blender. He had, by his own description, a deep and slightly obsessive love for liminal spaces, for the specific feeling of empty buildings, deserted malls, abandoned parking structures, spaces designed for people that have been drained of people. In January 2022, he uploaded a video called Backrooms Found Footage. It was 11 minutes long. There were no actors, no dialogue, Just shaky handheld camera footage of exactly the kind of space the original 4chan post had described. Those walls, that carpet, those lights, and something moving in the distance that you could never quite see clearly enough to identify. The video did not look like it cost money, because it did not. The backrooms themselves were built in Blender, rendered out, and then run through an actual VCR to give the footage the degraded, analog quality of something genuinely old. It was, technically speaking, a college student messing around with software on his laptop, but it was also absolutely terrifying in a way that most big-budget horror films are not. The reason it worked so well came down to one specific decision. Kane never tried to explain anything. There was no narrator, no title cards, no lore drop, just footage, the kind of footage you might find on a tape that someone left behind because they couldn't take it with them. The viewer's imagination did the rest, which is always, without exception, more frightening than anything a filmmaker can show you directly. The video went to 5 million views almost immediately, then 10, then 50, then over the following 2 years as Kane continued adding to the series. The combined view count across his Backrooms videos approached and then exceeded 180 million. He was not just the most visible creator working in analog horror. He had essentially created the template that every analog horror creator since has been working from. What makes Kane Parsons genuinely unusual, and what makes a story worth understanding even for people who are not particularly interested in horror, is what he did not do with that attention. He did not rush. He did not flood the channel with content to chase the algorithm. He did not license the concept cheaply to a streaming service that would produce 10 episodes of something forgettable and move on. He kept making exactly what he wanted to make, at exactly the pace he wanted to make it, with exactly the level of obsessive detail that had made the original video work in the first place. There is a video in his catalog that is 11 minutes long and is entirely about ceiling tiles, about the specific type of fluorescent light fixture used in commercial drop ceilings, about the acoustic properties of the spaces the Backrooms is modeled on. It is objectively one of the most niche pieces of content ever uploaded to YouTube. It has millions of views because the people who found Kane's work did not find it by accident. They found it because it was made for people who actually care about the things it is about. And those people, once they find something made specifically for them, tend to be extremely loyal. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, conversations about a feature film have been happening almost since the original video went viral. By early 2023, it was announced. A 24, James Wan, Sean Levy, a production team that included some of the most respected names in commercial genre filmmaking, and Kane Parsons directing, becoming, at 20 years old, the youngest filmmaker ever to direct a feature for A24. The announcement was met with a particular kind of internet anxiety that tends to follow whenever something beloved is handed to a studio. People had seen this before. They had watched things they loved get smoothed out, cleaned up, made more palatable and more profitable and less of themselves. The question was not whether Kane Parsons had the talent. The question was whether the machinery of a real film production would grind down whatever made his work special. The answer, as of May 29th, 2026, is that it did not. Backrooms, the film, is not a perfect movie. No movie is. But it is a remarkably faithful translation of what Kane had been building on YouTube for 4 years, achieved through a set of creative decisions that are worth understanding, because they are not obvious ones. The most important decision was the one Kane talks about most openly. They built everything. 30,000 square feet of Backrooms, constructed on stages in Vancouver, lit almost entirely with the same kind of cheap fluorescent tube lighting that the spaces were always meant to have. Not designed to look cinematic, not colored to be visually interesting, lit the way a real drop ceiling office gets lit, which is badly, flatly, without any of the warmth or drama that cinematographers normally spend their careers chasing. The result is a film that feels genuinely uncomfortable to look at in a way that has nothing to do with jump scares or gore. The discomfort is environmental. It comes from spending time in a space that your brain keeps trying to read as normal and keeps failing, because something about the scale or the repetition or the light is slightly, persistently wrong. The second decision was to run every frame of footage, even footage shot on a high-end cinema camera, through the same VCR conversion process Kane had been using on YouTube. Not a filter, not a plugin, an actual physical tape conversion that introduces a specific degradation of real analog media. The color bleed, the tracking artifacts, the slight instability in the image that makes you feel like you are watching a recording of something rather than the thing itself. It creates distance, and distance in horror creates dread. Cinematographer Jeremy Cox, working in close collaboration with Kane, made one more choice that sets the film apart from conventional horror. They shot almost everything on wide-angle lenses. Horror films typically go tighter, closer, more claustrophobic, because close-ups are an efficient way to create tension. Wide-angle shots do the opposite. They make spaces feel larger and emptier. They put more of the environment in frame. They make you feel smaller inside the space rather than trapped by it. It is a braver choice, and in the context of what the Backrooms is supposed to feel like, it is exactly right. The cast, which on paper seemed like an unexpected combination, works in ways that are difficult to explain without seeing the film. Chiwetel Ejiofor, an actor of extraordinary precision and control, brings to the performance exactly the quality the film needed. A specific kind of held-together quality that is always on the verge of giving way. Renate Reigns, whose work in Norwegian cinema has been among the most acclaimed of the last decade, brings something stranger, a quality of genuinely not quite knowing where she is or what is expected of her that serves the material perfectly. Mark Duplass, Finn Bennett, and the rest of the ensemble fill in the spaces around them with the kind of understated, naturalistic work that A24 productions tend to attract. The lore, for those who have followed the YouTube series closely, is handled with more care than most fans could reasonably have hoped for. The new elements introduced in the third act, the things that have been referred to in fan communities as still lives, feel like a natural extension of what Kane had been building rather than a studio imposition. The film does not try to explain the Backrooms. It never tells you what they are or where they come from or whether there's a way out. It is interested instead in what the Backrooms means to the characters trapped inside and by extension to the people watching from their seats in the dark. That distinction between what a thing is and what it means is ultimately what makes the Backrooms work as a cultural phenomenon at all. It means something different to everyone who encounters it. For some people, it is pure horror, the worst possible place to be trapped. For others, it is something stranger and more complicated, familiar, almost comforting, in the way that certain kinds of emptiness can feel like relief. Kane Parsons has said himself that he has always felt comfort in those spaces, that he goes into empty buildings and wishes he had a way to channel how much he loves them. The Backrooms was the answer to that wish. What comes next is, for now, deliberately unclear. Kane has spoken about a television series, a long-form continuation of the story that would run parallel to the film and connect back to everything he built on YouTube. He has described it as a different kind of entry point into the same world. Whether that series gets made depends on factors that are still unresolved, but the appetite for it, given the box office projections of the film, seems unlikely to be the problem. The Oldest View series, Kane's other major YouTube project, and by his own account his favorite thing he has ever made, remains on YouTube, where he believes it belongs. He has resisted the pressure to develop it as a feature or a streaming series, not because the interest is not there, but because he is convinced it was built for the medium it exists in and would not survive the translation. That kind of restraint, knowing what a thing is and refusing to turn it into something else for the sake of opportunity, is rarer than it should be. What is clear, looking at the full arc of this story, is that the Backrooms survived its journey from anonymous 4chan post to A24 release without becoming unrecognizable. That is not nothing. In an industry that has a long and well-documented history of taking things that work precisely because they are strange and specific and independent, and making them smooth and broad and profitable, the fact that the Backrooms still feels like the Backrooms is worth noting. Someone posted a picture of a yellow room in 2019 and did not sign their name to it. 7 years later, that room is playing in theaters around the world. And somewhere in Vancouver, there are 30,000 square feet of fluorescent lit corridor sitting in a warehouse, waiting to see what happens next. The lights are still on. They are always on. That was always the point. This has been a documentary investigation by Deep Dive Narrative. If there are corners of this story you want us to explore further, leave them in the comments below.